Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. Today, we're going to speak with Sean Mahar. He is the author or co-author of Stop Wasting Words, Leading Through Conscious Communication. When I saw the book, I thought, wow, this looks really interesting. We haven't had a guest like this before. We talked for 30 minutes. It felt like 5. It was so enjoyable. He brought up a lot involving habits, our habits around communication. And you know, Habitly is our sponsor. We teach on communications there, not at Sean's level, but we teach a lot about communications and how to work with others. You can check it out at habitly.com. Great stuff over there. You're going to really enjoy this conversation. There are so many takeaways, and he's really doing some very interesting work. When you think about communication, a lot of people think about how they pontificate and how they look and how they're perceived. And Sean, on the other hand, is all about outcomes. Does that make you curious about what this conversation is? Let's dive in. Sean, I'm excited about your work, but I've got a question. You have a book that you have titled Stop Wasting Words, Leading Through Conscious Communication. And I think of stop wasting words. I think, wow, how many words do I waste all the time? But then I started laughing because I was thinking, how many people do I know that seem to talk unconsciously? They just keep rambling and going on. I don't know that you've called this your life's work. It seems like it's a lifetime to get where you've been and what you can advise. I don't know where you want to start.
Well, let me start with the first part of the title, Stop Wasting Words. We are, after all, creatures of habit. From brushing our teeth and shaving in the morning, for those that do those things, to getting in our car and even forgetting how we got to work today. We are creatures of habit. And that's a good thing because we've evolved to reduce to habit those automatic things that don't require full consciousness. And we have our full consciousness for when we want to learn how to do something new, like the first time we operate a chainsaw. We want to be fully conscious of that.
Right? It better be.
It better be. So we're constantly in this human process of reducing things to our habits to free us up to do other things. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that many people realize that the habit-saving features they have let them not have to pay attention to those things so they can do other things. Unfortunately, some of those habits aren't right. They don't work. They were learned as a kid. They don't apply as an adult. Such as the habit of your parents pointing their finger at you all the time. And you pick that habit up as an adult. Well, it doesn't work in the boardroom. It never has. And so we've got to learn to become more conscious of habits that don't work so that we can acquire new ones. And the only point of learning that we all share is this moment of consciousness. We must become conscious in order for learning to occur. Conscious cannot happen on autopilot. And this is why in sports, be it baseball, basketball, football, in golf, in running, in baton passing, these professionals watch videos of themselves so they can continue to become more conscious of the nuances that they're doing so they can get better at it. If we don't study these things, we can't get better at them. And most people, as a real concrete example, don't want to get better at their driving skills. Well, I've taught my kids how to drive. I wasn't going to let anybody else do that. And we went through all these, closed supermarkets at night with snow and ice on them. And we did donuts. We did everything to discover that every car is different. Every car has a breaking point with the tires in the road. It's not like video games. They experienced driving. And that's how I taught them how to drive because they wanted to get better at it. And now they've both got better cars than I do. So more power to them. But learning occurs by experiencing things and becoming more conscious of it. And we believe that the world can get better if people become more conscious of what their communication is by looking at the impact they have on other people. I need to become conscious of that, not just of the words I'm using.
Well, I mean, you covered a lot. One of the things I would like to go back to when you talk about the consciousness piece, and you brought up parents, is that as I've gotten older, I've come to the realization of how we all have wounds from our parents, even though I grew up with 2 very loving parents. And that affects, like you brought up, the pointing the finger. My parents didn't point the finger. But there are ways of communication and interacting with people that we have as habits that we're not even aware of.
Absolutely.
It's unconscious. And if we're talking, and there's many aspects of our lives this affects, but one of the key areas is how we communicate with others. The other thing, Sean, have you realized this too? That a lot of these phrases that we used to hear as a kid really aren't true. Like sticks and stones can break my bones, but words don't matter. Words hurt
Words
when
matter.
they're used improperly. And they can hurt for a lifetime. When I was a little kid, I didn't know about verbal abuse or emotional abuse, which a lot is verbal, and so we pick up things from parents or adults. And how do you get more conscious about that? You brought up, kind of studying how you talk. What does that look like if, like, I can go back and listen to these recordings and I can learn things? Not everybody's recording themselves.
Yeah. One of the things that you do well in this kind of conversation is you create a sense of intimacy, and you call to mind something which I could never have rehearsed to answer this particular question. On my father's deathbed, which is about 20 years ago, maybe even 25 now, okay, the story he told me was about his father when his older brother died. My father was maybe 8, 9 years old. His brother was a couple years older. When his older brother died, his father took the body into one of the bedrooms and stayed there for 2 days. Wouldn't let the coroner in, wouldn't let the police in. He stayed there. He went in with black hair. He came out with white hair. He just stayed there with his son. And when he came out, my father's memory of their first encounter was, quote, the wrong one died.
Oh, my gosh.
So he told this to me on his deathbed. He carried it forever. Now, it could have meant I should have died instead of my son. It could have meant I wanted you to go instead of him. It could have meant anything. It could have just meant, who knows what it could have meant. But it was never consciously examined. My father's work in World War II as a survivor in infantry, he acquired what we now know today to be post-traumatic stress. There were no words for that for our World War II veterans. He had to cope on his own. And so his experiences never had the opportunity of a conscious study to get through them. He just carried them. And that's what a lot of people do if they hear words that bother them, either from someone they love or someone that they don't like. They carry those words, and those injuries get deeper and deeper and deeper. Not because, quote, what you said yesterday still hurts me. It's what you said yesterday I'm still holding on to. But if we don't get conscious about studying those things, we can't get better at it. I want to give you 2 very specific examples. One is when my son was about 5 years old, he said these beautiful words to me. I was putting him to bed. He said, Dad, I hate you. Now, most people, especially I'm thinking about parents, get defensive, protective, and about respect. And you can't talk to me like that. All this kind of blustery stuff. I study communication. I've always studied communication. I saw this behavior and said, you hate me. Well, one of the secrets, by the way, is to break the habit pattern. If get this, break those patterns. So I said to him, thank you for telling me. Now he's 32 years old. I remember this as vividly as it was yesterday. I said, thank you so much for telling me, Patrick. He's probably going to be upset to hear his name over there, but that's right. Thank you for telling me. What do you mean, thank you? Well, most kids would be afraid to tell their parents that. But I'm really glad that you trust me enough to tell me how you feel. Is there anything else you want to tell me? I wanted to watch more television. I didn't know that. I thought it was bedtime. Well, usually I just want to watch a little more TV. How much more TV do you want to watch? Just a couple more minutes? We can do that. Let's negotiate. What do you need? I want to watch more TV. Great. Well, he never said it again. And how many people would have reacted to that from some place they have to protect from a 5-year-old? It's insane. So the consistent awareness I have of studying communication helps me solve novel situations, because my first response is usually curiosity, not blame, not judgment, not protection, not attack, none of those things. Just curiosity when these things happen. Now, as an adult.
Now, it's interesting if I can comment. So going back to what you said earlier, I want to make certain the audience picks up on it, that the other thing you didn't do was that becoming silent and grabbing onto that "I hate you" from your son,
Right.
and never letting go of it, and how it would have affected your parenting from that day forward.
Yes. I wasn't going to make the same mistake my father did, heard a soundbite and locked onto it forever.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, our speech is and I hope I can say this without sounding too bizarre, our speech is the sound human animals make. It's the sound we make. Yeah. And it means different things at different times, regardless of the words that we use to fill that sound. And so if I say I hate you, it means I'm upset. It doesn't mean I hate you. And after all, I mean, you know this perhaps better than I do because of your own background, but how does a 5-year-old even know what hate means? There's no way he could ever say anything that would cause me to feel like he hates me. Yeah. And one of my lines to him was, he can tell me anything he wants. Nothing he can ever say, ever, in his wildest imagination, will ever diminish my love for him. He can't. He's incapable of taking away my love, no matter what. So if that's the goal, you're never going to succeed.
And I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do, at least what I've learned. So I do have a child who's been through a lot of trauma, and she will say very mean things. Yeah. And I just keep telling her, well, I just love you. Yeah. And nothing you can say, nothing you can do will change that. That's right. And she keeps feeling, based on her past trauma, that she has to earn my love. Yeah. And that's, and I just keep repeating, that's not the way it works. No, not the way it works. Yeah. And
I want to stay in this theme that you introduced about, habits and lifetimes and stuff that we learn young and don't adjust to at the end. In some circles, I have reputation. Others, I just want to, point blank point out, I'm an idiot in so many things. I took my lawnmower to a couple places to have it fixed. And in both cases, 2 mechanics told me it's just a dirty carburetor. Anybody can clean this. Just grab YouTube and it's a dirty carburetor. Just get it done. I'm not going to bill you for something this simple. So I watched YouTube videos. I took it apart. I put it back together again. It sounded worse. It sounded, like a Harley Davidson motor, and it didn't cut. And I blew it. So I went to a third, he never saw me before, mechanic. Said, I'm not sure what's wrong with my lawnmower. Can you fix it for me? I don't care what it costs. I got to get this lawnmower fixed. So I came back the next day. He said, it's all set right now. Your carburetor was dirty, and somebody disconnected your exhaust system. There are things I know nothing about. In the area of coaching, of helping people become more conscious of their own behavior and how they create some of their own challenges, that's something I've been getting better at every day. And so a friend of a friend of a friend referred this person who was a physician in charge of a large clinic with an oversight board. And about 6 months before his 3-year contract was about to expire, a mutual friend of mine and this other person I didn't know, called me and said, will you help my friend? And I said, well, if it's about lawnmowers, no. But if it's about communication, I'll give it a shot. And she said to me, I think it's about communication, but I can't be sure. But I'd like to, ask him to sit with you just to try to sharpen his saw, as Stephen Covey would say, or just improve his skills in communication, relationship building, and just tell him I think he could use it. And I said, and so what's really going on here? And she said, the chairman of the board called her, knowing that she's a friend. She's another physician, and wanted to let me know that he was going to lose his contract, that when the contract's up, it's not being renewed, that he has acquired reputation for being arrogant, to an edge that's so condescending, no one wants to work with him. Some of his nurses have quit. Some of the doctors don't want to work with him anymore. Some of the people he subspecializes to will handle his written communication. They don't want to talk to him. He's just destroyed the leadership of this organization. We don't have anything we can fire him for, but we don't want him around anymore. And so I want to let you know that, you may need to be very close to this guy because he's going to crash pretty quickly. He has no clue that he's failing in these areas. Yeah. I said, okay. I always like the truth. So we arranged to meet for an hour and a half. And right now I'm with you, David, thinking this feels like it might be a long story, but it's a fairly short story. In the first maybe 20 minutes or so, I interviewed this guy. All right. What's this going on? How's your life? What's going on? This is what I do. I help people in communication, lots of different ways. Want to get to know you better. How's your life? What's going on? And as I listened to him, I know it was going to get, I'm already married and I already had a best man, but if I was getting married again, I'd want him to be my best man. He was brilliant. I love this man. I'm thinking there must be something he's displaying that I'm not seeing. And communication is the whole body, the space, the presence, the nonverbals, and the tones. So I studied him, and I studied people based on our five senses. What do I see? What do I hear? Do I touch anything? Do I feel anything? Do I smell anything? All five senses. Okay, study 5 minutes. So after I do my assessment, I realized what appears to be going on. So I said to him, hold on a second, one second. I know I asked you a question, but I just want to interrupt you for a second here. I think I've noticed a pattern. I just want to check this pattern out with you. It appears to me in our conversation that you never break eye contact. That appears to be going on here, but I'm not really sure. And I'd love, you sharing with me what your experience of that is. He said, well, that's the truth. My parents always taught me it was rude to not make eye contact. And I thought to myself,
I was trained that too.
Pardon?
I was trained that too.
All right. I said, so I'm not going to lecture you about how there are several cultures for which that is the greatest of insults. I'm not going to teach you anything. Now that you've verified that's apparently an issue, I'm going to hold eye contact with you for 5 minutes. So for 5 minutes, I'm going to give you the experience that you give other people. Only 5 minutes. Let me set up my timer, blah, blah, blah. So let's continue the conversation about your cat, your dog, your favorite car, your guitar, whatever you want, for 5 minutes. And then I'm going to check in and see how you feel. At 2.5 minutes, he screamed uncle. He could not take it for 2.5 minutes. And at that 2.5 minute mark, he was conscious, he was present, he was aware of this behavior for the first time in his life. And he began apologizing for all the people he's offended without realizing that his eyes were like power tool drills. And he was staring at people. He wasn't making contact with them. He wasn't looking away. He wasn't giving a break. He had no clue. Now, I did do some lecturing because the eyes and communication have some relatively well-researched value in terms of what we do with our eyes and how they work and how we can increase intensity or decrease it and modify it and things of those nature. But we spent the remaining hour practicing looking away. That was a new habit for him. Most of us, we get an idea. You see me leaving for a moment to get an idea and things like that. Most of us do that naturally. Those habits had to be relearned for him. And we were done after one session, but he wanted to meet one more time to practice breaking eye contact and looking away, not to learn as some people, when they're rehearsing public speaking, they go through motions. So they know they're going to do this when they're pointing, and they know they're going to do this when they do this. But actually to become more in touch with his own awareness of when he needed to break, because he just discovered people's eyes and people look away from him because he's staring at them. Give them a chance to give people a break to think. And so our work was done after 2 meetings. I told his friend his work was done. No one knew we did this except his friend. And at the board meeting, his friend got a phone call saying, we've renewed his contract for 3 more years. We don't know what happened, but he's the most compassionate person in the world, which he always was. But he had this habit that he was unaware of, and it was ruining his professional life.
It's interesting. My wife and I, we don't watch a lot of TV, but we clued into the British channel that's on our Roku TV. And there was a series that's gone like 10 seasons about a doctor, a surgeon, who has terrible, he's like autistic or whatever the deal is. I mean, he's just, his interpersonal skills are awful.
Those skills.
And so he moved from a hospital to a small, quaint village. And when he's traveling on the train, a woman joins him, I think it's a train, and he starts staring at her. And she's very upset. And she shifts seats and says, you're weird or whatever. And then when he goes in and gets interviewed by the hospital, the local small community group, I don't think it's not even a hospital. He's going to be the general practitioner of the small town. And it turns out she's one of the people on the decision-making committee, and she's very upset. And so they excuse him because she raises an issue when they're all about to accept him. And then he goes out and waits outside the room. And then she comes out and says, "You're in, but you watch your steps. I'm going to nail you the first time you make a bad step." And he's giving her that look again. And he says, "You have such and such happening in your right eye. Do you have some pain in that eye?" And she goes, "Yes, I do." And he mentions a few more things. And he says, "You have glaucoma. You need to see someone immediately." And she just doesn't know what to say. And she leaves. And then the next time you see her in the show, she has a patch over her eye. Apparently had seen someone and got that. We didn't want to get into another series, so we didn't watch it. But I was reminded of the series when you brought that up. There's a couple things I want to call out to the audience and make certain they caught. One thing, and first of all, actually, three things. I want to go back to one thing you said earlier with your son's situation, is that you asked questions when something came up. And even now, when you were working with this person, you asked questions when you pretty much figured out what was wrong. You didn't start by saying, boom. You asked questions. Years ago, somebody said, much more better known than me, great leaders ask good questions. And I found that to be very true. It might have been the guy who was the head of GE. I don't think it might have been Jack Welch, but it might have been Emmelt. I'm not sure. But anyway.
Both could have.
Yeah, it might have been Emmelt. So the next thing is that I want to raise it to the audience's attention that what you did with him that was so wise and why you're so good at what you do is you gave him an image. You had him experience what he was doing to others.
Yes.
If you had just told him, it wouldn't have sank in anywhere as deeply, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So you gave him that. And then the other thing is that just recently, quite frankly, Sean, this year, a few months back, I started to, because I have a client that has this issue. They train and then they say, "You got it." And people nod their heads and they walk away and think they got it. Okay. So I have this little phrase I say, okay, everything we're going to do moving forward is train and test, train and test, train and test.
Yes.
And you did that. I want the audience to understand how powerful that was. That he got it because that 2.5 minutes and he broke down. He cried, "Uncle, I love that."
Yeah.
He couldn't nail it. But then you didn't just say, "Okay, you got it, we're done." You then worked with him and coached him and continued to, you trained and tested more.
He needed new habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Automatic habits.
Yeah.
Because the consciousness of being conscious and communicating all the time is exhausting.
Yeah.
So we got to face it, get there, go with it for a while and get better. And then I'd like to, I don't know the best word here, highlight something you just highlighted as an issue of practice for me. And I want to further support your effort to bring clarity to this to your audience. I now less want to tell you the name of the conference because I want to make sure this person is never identified. But I flew out to Minneapolis, St. Paul 2 weeks ago to do a 2-hour workshop for people involved in the healing arts, the therapy art, the peer coaching art. And their COO and CEO wanted me to help them get stronger at the clinical work that they do, using some of my communication techniques. And so when I was done, I lingered outside the room for a couple hours, just doing my emails and stuff like that. And one of the people came out and asked me to coach her in her relationship with her boyfriend. Now, I'm flattered, but I don't know what's going on. And so I said, I'd love to help. I don't know if I'm the best person. So I need some stories about what's going on. And she shared some stories. And the focal point was he accuses her of not listening to him. And this is a real sore point. And it'll show up sometimes once a day, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month. But there's this, you're not listening to me. And she describes, what's going on. I said, look, I'm very sorry. I can't do this anymore. I appreciate you give me stories. I believe those stories have been very compelling, and I think I know what's going on. and I can't do anything for you as long as we stay in the past. I can tell you stories, you can tell me stories, but if you don't mind, just testing this out, I'd like to do this in the present and actually work with you instead of about an event in the past and bring it to the present. She said, I've never done that before. I said, well, I'll show you how it works. I will sit here and tell you, you never listened to me. And I'll try and get excited about that. And you didn't listen to me yesterday. You just never listen. You don't care. I'll be a little animated like that. And you need to know right now, none of this is true. I don't even know you. I was going to make these lines up. I'd like to try and react to me. Not tell me stories, but just react to me. And that'll help me know whether or not I can be useful to you. You want to play? Sure, I'll play. So I said, you never listen to me. I mean, I'm getting sick and tired of this. You don't listen at all. I don't know what's going on here, but you don't listen to me. And her response was this: how dare you say that to me? I always listen to you. It's you're the problem. I said, so, okay, we can end the role play now.
Yeah, whoa.
What's going on here? He says, I guess I've got some issues. I said, I guess you do have some issues. So I would be delighted to work with you on your issues, not on him who's never going to meet me. Yeah. And I'd like to work with you on how you respond when people talk to you like that and what your choices are. And we met 2 more times at the conference to try and make progress in that area. And the issue is, in the present, we can study it, we can test it, we can get better at it, we can learn new habits, because a lot of her reactivity was habitual.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to blame her parents, nor mine, nor yours, but I wonder if when she was growing up, she was yelled at a lot and had to defend herself. And some of those habits just carry forward, even though they may no longer be useful or service.
Well, that's right. Or her mother behaved that way when her father accused her of something.
Yeah.
Who knows? We don't know, but there was something in the life experience.
And I can't change a habit unless I can help people become conscious of it.
Yeah. Someone modeled the behavior, or she developed the behavior based on how they were treating her. And very, very powerful stuff. So when people work with you, you brought up a couple of instances of people who've worked with you, and what is the spectrum? I mean, we've talked 30 minutes already, and I feel like I just talked 5 minutes because it's been so enjoyable to talk with you, Sean. Of course, you're a master of communication, so it should be enjoyable to talk with you. But
not necessarily. I've got people I can tell you about.
So when I'm just, as the audience is listening, they're probably wondering, well, is this for me or is this not for me? So what are the broad spectrum of people? I think of leaders I know that, some of them use a lot of fillers, those types of things. Some of them go off on rabbit trails, so it's not focused. They're brilliant people. They just have some bad communication habits. I think of, there's a variety of leaders. I even think of our politicians, but let's not go there because that's a whole nother game. But what type of people do you work with?
There's a wholesomeness to my work, a simplicity to my work, a profoundness to the work that Eric and I do in communication. Eric is the professor of communication. He's a dean of arts and sciences at the University of South Florida. He's my co-author. He's the only reason I have a book, because when he met me, I taught him things about communication he did not know. I, having a master's degree, him having a PhD, and having a world audience, did not know things that I have discovered. And so we met for several years, and we wrote the book together because he said, what I know has got to be published. And the simplicity is that, just a few points here, is that we use words a lot. And as other animals use sounds. And in the origin of our using words, our sounds were intended to accomplish things in the real world. And so babies, as young as 2 weeks, know that their crying has been taken care of, and they stop crying. They know that their sounds have accomplished something. There's a productivity. By a year and a half, babies know how to pass objects back and forth with perfect grasping, better than many relay racers. They know when they've got it and when you don't have it instantaneously. They understand handoffs flawlessly. And then this is all function of what I'm going to call sign language, pre-conceptual. Just we know how to connect with people. When a mother cub growls at its baby, it's not a growl that says, come back in 3 minutes. It's keep away. It's a simple message. Skunks don't fire one across the bow. They will agitate themselves. And most animals in the wilderness know what this agitation means, but dogs don't. So they usually wind up getting sprayed because they don't speak the same language. Yeah. But these are all very clear real life signs. And at a certain age, it could begin as early as 2.5. Human beings begin to think conceptually. Now, up until this point, if I introduced you to my kid as, here's so-and-so's daddy. No, your daddy. Daddy means one thing. Daddy there can't be two daddies, only one daddy. But we reach a point where we discover that tables can be pool tables, poker tables, dining room tables, card tables. All of a sudden, words are symbols and they can mean anything. Anything. Now, words become symbols. People go to management school and get taught big words like mission, strategy, outcomes, chain of command, none of which have any real meaning in the real world. These are just symbols. And people learn power and authority, and they read to people. And if they're interrupted because somebody wants to know what they mean, don't interrupt me. You're being rude. But do what I say. But I don't know what you mean. But they don't know I don't know what you mean. So they try it and they fail and they get fired because they don't know what it means. And anybody who attempts to negotiate what it means is in trouble for not having listened hard enough. So we have an entire bureaucracy of leadership around the planet where if there's a boss and a subordinate and something goes wrong, it's subordinate's fault for not having listened. Because the speaker believes their symbols are signs and that they're clear because they think they're clear. They don't test clarity. So our work, simply put, is that all of our words are up for grabs once we put them out there in the ether. And if we really want to accomplish something physical and meaningful, we've got to test what the understanding is. So bad questions are, do you know what I mean? Good questions are, how long will it take to do it? And when it's done, what would the halfway point look like? Bad questions are, and true story, I did this for Toyota. I heard about my work and I was invited to this Arlington, Kentucky, the North American headquarters. My first WebEx around North America, Mexico, Michigan, Canada, a real hoot. And I did my thing for them. When I was done, the final exam was, and I'll pretend it's you, David, but I'm saying, would you please make some potato salad for me this weekend? I'm having a family reunion. And David's response was, as planned, to say, sure. And I said, well, sure doesn't really mean anything. And from this point forward, although I have no powers of hypnosis, I want, when anybody says sure, for you to think of the letters S-H-I-T on neon lights on somebody's forehead, because that's all you've really got to take away. They think they know what you said, and they think they can deliver on what they think they know you said. You got nothing. So what one question could I ask? Because checking for grasping only takes 4 or 5 seconds. That's all it takes. Now, sometimes grasping occurs during the conversation. The person could have brought me and said, what kind of taste like, blah, blah, blah. But if it doesn't occur naturally, the giver has to care about the outcome. So I asked them to figure out the best question. I had different groups working. It was a serious effort. I got this question, right? And you can laugh. Ask him if he knows how to cook. Because we know him and you don't. I said, that's what you want me to spend my time on. These are wasted words because they're not grounded in anything physical that I can taste, touch, see. I said, that's what you want me to spend my breath on? Yes. Check with him. I said, so, David, do you know how to cook? Sure. I said, let me show you how easy this is. And some of my clients or students call this, the Captain Obvious punchline. I said, so, how do you make your potato salad? Well, I like using russet potatoes or red bliss potatoes, this and the other thing. And I like Hellmann's instead of Miracle Whip. I said, I just wanted to check. I now know you know how to make potato salad. Yeah. That's all I need to know. Just one thing. And if the answer were, well, I use the local supermarket, well, then never mind, I got somebody else. So this checking for grasping checks for grasping or the lack of. And it grounds the conversation in the physical world. And it always works. So the joy. I have a friend in India now who teaches my stuff in Farsi. In Portugal, one of the biggest oil companies in the world, EDP Portugal, based in Lisbon, had a research team trying to find who could help them advance their strategic plans around communication. 3-year plan. They got to get better at what they do. The research department called me and said, "We've picked you, Sean." Now, how they got to me in Munson, Massachusetts, well, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, so I know how they got to me. But they vetted me. And so I said, "So you're calling, asking for a proposal? What kind of proposal do you want?" "Well, just one page." I said, "I'd be happy to give you a 20-page proposal. What you're asking me to do is prepare a 90-minute lecture for 13,000 employees around the world and have that lecture be translated into at least 4 different languages real time with subtitles. And you want this in 4 weeks. And I want to make sure that you have a chance to vet me to make sure I'm the right person. We've already decided that. We just need a piece of paper to float through for billing purposes." And so we did that. So I know our stuff is profound because it applies to how human beings connect with each other. And the closer we are to the real world, to flesh and blood vocabulary, and the less we get involved in the ether about the 15 strategies of applications of these principles applied to those principles, we're not getting anywhere. So one of Eric, my good Eric, one of his favorite lines I will never forget was, he learned years ago never to ask people what they think, because it's just nothing but a rabbit hole. It doesn't stop. Everybody thinks. Don't want to go there. Ask people how this issue touches them. And then we get something we can work on in a group. So there's lots of tricks in this area. Can I leave you 2 thoughts?
Oh, of course.
Personally. Okay. In our book, we recommend discontinuing as much as possible 4 words. One of those words is the word is. The word is one of the leading culprits of escalations of violence. This is a glass of water. It is also a 3/4 glass of seltzer water. It is also a glass of room temperature water. It is also a mug of water. So as soon as leaders start using the word is and presume that their is the same as in everybody else's mind, it's going south fast. Every is ambiguous. If we get away from that, I would say, "I'm thirsty and this is the water that I drink." And the conversation's over. We will go to a movie and I will say, "That is or was a great movie or a rotten movie." And you will say, "It was not." We'll go to the movie and I will say, "I really enjoyed this movie." And you will say, "What did you enjoy about it?" We do not go down the river if we avoid the word is. It's so simple. And people do not need electroshock therapy. Once they stop using is, life gets better. It's that simple. Now, the research on that is called E-Prime. It was done in the 50s and 60s by a group of linguists who I admire greatly. And they found the word is to be problematic in written language. And I find the word is to be problematic in spoken language. So there's a lot of history there that we could go to for research and discussions. But generally, it's just the word, if we stop using it and think of other words, life gets better. The second and last thing I want to leave you with is, and this is the experience I'd like to, talk you into getting your wife to come play with us. This is a pen. And when I pass this pen, I know when to let go of it because I know when grasping has occurred unconsciously. I know exactly when you grasped it. If this were a hot cup of coffee, I wouldn't pass it to you like this to burn yourself. I would reorganize it to make it easier for you to safely catch it, even if it meant burning my fingers a little bit. In the physical world, and this is an experience, again, I would like to experience, not just hear me talk about, we are flawless in our generosity with other people, making sure they grasp it. Down the gravy bowl, the salt and pepper shaker, everything we care about. When it comes to speech, people have been traumatized by psychologists into thinking something magical is happening. But speech is still a physical process of expressing noises, registering them on the tympanic membrane, and coming to an association. And that biological process means only you have an interpretation of what I said. Only you believe you know what I said. I said the car's on sale. You think that means $3,000 off. I think it means $500 off. Only so what you walk away with is more important than what I thought I was saying. So for every communication, for every expression, the value is knowing what the other person is leaving with, not in what I said. And yet the world of Toastmasters is filled with people being taught what you say and how you say is important. You must be clear based on your own standards. And who cares about them? We practice clarity against our own standards. It does not work. One of my students, some people can get this from reading, which is why Eric insisted we read the book. One of my students was the head of a risk management firm in Oklahoma. And sight unseen, we never met. She called me after reading some of my work and hired me. It was a really, really nice contract to teach 1,000 physicians how to improve their handoffs. Because for her research, 200,000 people a year are dying because of poor oral communication at the time of handoff from hospitals and health organizations. Over 400 a year because of other handoff problems, but over 200,000 people every year. And I know it's more since COVID because of the lack of clarity around those communications. Yeah. And one of those people came back twice. And I said, I recognize you. I mean, I've got 1,600 people in the audience. I recognize you. This is your second chicken dinner. I don't know what's going on here. He said, well, I belong to a Toastmasters chapter. I'm in charge of it. And I just want to tell you right now, with God as my witness, all they care about is looking good, is sounding good, is being organized, is organizing your butterflies, making sure you meet certain standards on paper. And they don't care about the audience knowing what they've received. And we're going to change that now. Because when I give instructions to a patient, let's say someone with a heart problem or diabetes or a severe injury, I'm no longer satisfied having expressed myself. I have to know what they're leaving with. I'm never going to ask them to repeat it back anymore because birds can do that. I'm going to ask them what their priority is for taking care of themselves and see if they get a sense of what it is. Because if they get the sense, they'll follow the instructions. If they have a different sense, they won't. And so I've learned to care about grasping, Sean. Thank you. So those are my 2 points. One is about the object of passing and grasping. The other is how it shows up in the real world for making real life changes for people and saving lives. It's a big issue for me. It's not just semantics.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for indulging me and letting me share a couple more things. That's okay. Give me closure. Okay. I feel better. But I want to summarize that we care about the sounds, the noises people make, and how we connect with each other, how we actually accomplish things in the real world. And it makes a difference how we focus on the outcome instead of get caught up in the discussion, the debate, in the ether. And so wasting words or using words that have no physical connection at all, and using words that do help us achieve our objective work. And my last story is one of my chief operating officers once invited me to come to a meeting to talk about succession planning. All right. Not hard. Okay. Done it many times. And I had some succession planning maps to look at. And so I walk in and she's using real-time minutes, which I've taught her. And she has on her whiteboard, we're going to discuss Sean's suggestions about succession planning. I walked in early. I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, but I must be in the wrong room. What do you mean I'm in the wrong room? Well, you and I have worked together and I don't talk like that. She said, oh, I'm so sorry. She walked over the whiteboard, crossed out discuss, and wrote decide which plan to use. We're there to make a decision that will result in actions. We're not there to discuss something ad nauseum. So that's how the stuff shows up. There's lots of ways it shows up, lots of places, but the bottom line is that words are sounds we make. How do we connect with each other? What are our purposes for speaking? And it's not for me to express myself. Not at all. My purpose is not to express myself. It's to accomplish something for the other person.
So that's very powerful to end. I want to emphasize one thing too that you said. You talked about the person who gets fired because the boss wasn't clear.
Yes.
But it's their fault. So I have gone into my clients for a long time now, and I say, hey, when you have a problem employee, you don't have a problem employee. You have a problem with leadership.
Yes.
And I love the way you brought up today. I think it's been unique in our almost 250 podcasts now, if you include our 50 that were no bad bosses, that you're really emphasizing the communication side and the verbal side. It sounds like
the grasping side.
Yeah, the grasping side. And really, I'm just, my mind's just popping everywhere of people and situations where you could help and your work can help. So I really am glad that you've come on the show. I'd like you to repeat what you just said before I went into that so we can close with it again. You told your story and you want, we're going to decide. I'd like you to repeat that and then tell the audience where they can learn more about your work.
My communication work is about the outcome. When we give something physical to somebody, we care that they've got it. When we give something oral to somebody, we should care too and pay attention to that. And so this grasping concept is novel. No one else in the world does it. That's how EDP Oil found me, because they realized it's going to change their culture. And I'm happy to help people get there. Our website is stopwastingwords.com. Very simple, very easy to find. It's a big website. It's a heady website. It doesn't have a lot of calls to action in, but it can help a lot of people. On page 1, we have a 10-item assessment. It's a simple, free assessment. People can take that assessment, and if they score 10, I will know, and I will write them a letter congratulating them. Less than 1% does that. Most people score between 3 and 4. Some of those people are brave enough to follow up with me to find out how they see the world differently, but unfortunately, many do not. It's a really nice assessment, and we provide the answers instantaneously. My phone number is 413-668-5599. I'm not going to repeat it because you have a button on your phone. You can go back so I don't waste airtime doing those things. But I'm happy to take phone calls. I don't have an answering service. Very few people call me for help because most people are satisfied with their habits, and the habits will keep them where they are. And I want to help people get better and be more effective in their communication. That's our goal.
Fantastic, Sean. I could go on, but I want to end with you closing there. Thank you so much for being on the show. I hope a ton of people call you, and I hope we get the opportunity to do some work together again.
It'll be a pleasure. I'll send you an email about some follow-up experiences for you and your wife.
Fantastic. I look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for your time. It's been a delight. Really, I appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in today. Hey, if you liked the conversation I had with Sean, I thought it was great. And I'm not biased. I just really love the guy. I thought he had some great insights. Please give us some feedback, a rating. We'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned. We've got more great guests coming.